Multi-tiered cakes are arranged in different forms, but the most popular arrangement is to stack them. You need to know how to stack a cake, especially if you are a cake decorator who intends to make a living from making cakes. On the other hand, you may just be a hobbyist who loves to DIY stuff like your celebration cakes. This video would also come in handy for you. It would teach you not only how to stack a cake but also give you some expert tips and advice. The great thing about the culinary arts, or even art of any form, is that you can pick up different tips and tricks from different sources. And with those, you can formulate methods and procedures that work for you. So, sit back and get ready to learn as we proceed. One of the basics of stacking a cake is having the right materials. So here are the materials and tools you need. 1. Good quality cake turntable. 2. Cake drums or foam boards. A cake drum is a base on which a cake is placed for decoration. It is supposed to be heavy enough to support the weight of the cake or cakes. A cake drum can be made with different materials. These materials include wood, cardboard, and foam. You can make them yourself or buy ready-made ones. 3. Cake boards. These are bases too, but are usually thinner than the cake drum. 4. Dowel rods or bubble tea straws. Dowel rods are wooden or plastic rods that are inserted into the middle of cakes to help support the weight of the cake that would be placed on it. These, in combination with cake boards, stacker boards, ensure that the cake underneath would not cave in under the weight of the ones above. 5. Icing spatula. 6. A long serrated knife or cake leveler. 7. Bench scraper. A bench scraper is also known as an icing scraper. 8. Wire cutter. A wire cutter is necessary to cut your dowel rods to the desired size. You can also use a strong scissor if you prefer. Preparing your cakes. Another basic of stacking cakes is preparing the cake. Trust me, if you mess up this step, every other thing will not go well. Step 1. Bake the cake and ensure that it is level. You can achieve a level of cake by using baking strips. You can buy these baking strips on Amazon or your local baking goods store. But in a situation where your cake comes out with a dome, you need to level it out. This is where a good cake turntable comes in. Place your cake on the turntable and with a serrated knife mark off the spot you want to level the cake from. Then swivel the turntable as you keep your knife steadily sawing back and forth. Once your cake is leveled, fill as desired and crumb coat. You may decide to do a double, 3 or 4 layer tier. Just ensure that all the layers are level before you fill and stack them into one tier. Step 2. After crumb coating, leave the cake to sit for a minimum of 2 hours. When you are working with 3 or more tiers of multi-layered cakes, you'll discover that your cakes would have time to set. Starting out with the bottom tier, level all the layers, fill them, then stack and crumb coat, then put in the fridge. Repeat the process with the second tier and then the last tier. By the time you are done with the last tier, the first tier you worked on is ready for the second coating or covering with fondant. The most important reason you don't cover your cake with fondant, or any other icing you choose, immediately after crumb coating is to allow it to set. This would ensure that when you cover your cake with fondant or the final layer of buttercream or whatever medium you choose, there wouldn't be ugly bulges. You know those rings you see where the cake layers are joined? That would be avoided when you leave the cakes to settle, so don't skip this step. Decorating and stacking. Step 1. Cover the cake with fondant. Some cake decorators like to cover the cake on the cake drum, that would be the display board. Others prefer to cover the cake on a different board before moving it to the display board. We like to do the latter. This gives us the liberty to do some fancy work on the display board. Step 2. So, you have covered all your cakes in the final coating of icing or fondant. And maybe you have decided to decorate your cake board, display board, so let's go with that. Remember that you'll place all the cakes on stacker boards of the same diameter as the cakes. Smear a little buttercream or royal icing on the center of the display board and transfer the bottom tier to that board. Step 3. Get a stacker board that's the same dimension as the next tier that would be on the bottom tier. Place that board on top of the bottom tier and measure it off. Remove the stacker board, then measure off the dowel rods or bubble tea straws the height of the cake and cut to size. Then insert them proportionately in the diameter measured off earlier. Cover the space with buttercream or royal icing and place the stacker board on top. Smear a dollop of icing on top of the stacker board and place the second tier on it. If you are stacking the cake at home, then repeat this process with the second tier cake. But in a situation where you want to stack outdoors, then just dowel the second cake on a separate cake board. Carry the stacker boards and icing with you to finish the process later. Expert tips and advice. 1. If you find that buttercream does not hold your cake firmly to the cake board or stacker board, you can use candy melts. We however choose to use royal icing. But one advantage of using buttercream is that it is easier to lift off the cake from the board if you use buttercream. You might need to lift off the cake after stacking for some correction or repairs. 2. Remember to chill your buttercream covered cakes first before stacking. 3. A hack applied by some cake decorators to keep the bottom tier stable on the display board is this. Cut out a circle in the middle of the display board, not through the board though. If you covered the board with foil or other fancy material, that would be a circle of the material. This helps to hold the bottom tier firmly to the display board. 4. Remember that you use cake drums that are wider in diameter than the cake that would sit on them, while the stacker boards would be the same width. 5. Constantly check and ensure that your cake is level, as this would affect the stability of the cake. In the same vein, make sure that your working surface is level. Never stack your cakes on a turntable because it can wobble. You need a firm, stable, and level working surface. 6. Allowing your cake to settle ensures that the filling would not squish out of the cake and cause ugly ridges after you have covered the cake. 7. Do not go overboard with the filling between layers, as this can impact negatively on your cake settling well. Some cake decorators don't even torte their cakes, they just brush the whole cake with glaze before crumb coating. Note this if you choose to glaze your cake. You have to let the cake dry off a bit before you coat. Or else your cake would be all slippery and you'll have a hard time with the icing. 8. Ensure that there is at least 2 inches clearance between each tier. This means that if I use a 10-inch cake as my bottom tier, then the next tier should be not more than 8 inches. This would give you room for borders and other decorations. 9. The display board, which is the cake drum that the cake would be displayed with, should also be bigger than the cake that would sit on it. 10. Ensure that the stacker board is the exact size as the cake that would sit on it. If not, it would distort the overall aesthetics of your finished cake. In conclusion, now that you have all these instructions, tips, and advice, we believe that you have the basics to go ahead and stack your cakes. Remember that careful attention to detail is key. If you found this video helpful, click the subscribe button below. Turn the notification on, so that you will know once we post a new video. Do not forget to visit our site, www.cakedecorationproducts.com, for more cake content like this. Thank you.